Burkina Faso, a nation nestled in the heart of West Africa, often referred to as the land of upright men, a name that speaks to the integrity and resilience of its people. But beyond the aspirational name lies a complex history, one marked by both immense pride and periods of profound instability. It is a nation shaped by a deep sense of cultural pride, a vibrant tapestry woven from diverse ethnic groups and traditions, and repeated upheaval, a recurring theme that has tested the very foundations of this young nation. The spirit of its people, however, remains unbroken, a testament to their enduring strength. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, a pivotal moment that promised a new era of self-determination and prosperity, military coups have become a defining feature, an unfortunate pattern etched into the nation's political landscape. These interventions, often driven by promises of reform and stability, each promising change, a fresh start, but often deepening instability, creating a cycle of hope and disappointment that has plagued Burkina Faso for decades. The root causes of these coups are complex, ranging from economic grievances to political marginalization and security concerns. In 2022, this cycle reached a fever pitch, a culmination of years of simmering discontent and unfulfilled promises. The nation teetered on the brink, grappling with a multitude of challenges. With two coups occurring in just 8 months, a stark illustration of the fragility of the political order and the deep-seated frustrations within the military and the broader population. January saw President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, the democratically elected leader, ousted from power by a military junta, a move that sent shockwaves through the country and the international community. This junta was led by Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, a figure who emerged promising a swift return to stability and security. He vowed to restore security amid a raging jihadist insurgency, a growing threat that had destabilized the country and claimed countless lives. The fight against these extremist groups became the central justification for the coup. The public, weary of violence and desperate for peace, cautiously welcomed the new leadership, hoping that Damiba could deliver on his promises and bring an end to the bloodshed. But hope quickly faded as the security situation continued to deteriorate, as violence worsened and insurgents gained ground, extending their reach and influence across the country. The attacks became more frequent and more brazen, leaving communities devastated and displaced. Disillusionment spread, not just among civilians, who felt increasingly vulnerable and abandoned by their government, but within the army itself, where frustration grew over the lack of resources, poor leadership, and the inability to effectively combat the insurgency. By September, the military's failure to deliver security had become undeniable, fueling a sense of betrayal and desperation within the ranks. This failure set the stage for another coup, a second military intervention in less than a year, further plunging the nation into uncertainty. The events of 2022 forced the nation to confront a hard question, a fundamental dilemma that lay at the heart of Burkina Faso's political crisis. Is the military a solution, a force capable of restoring order and stability, or a symptom of deeper problems, a reflection of underlying issues such as poverty, inequality, and a lack of good governance? Out of this turmoil, a young captain would soon emerge, a relatively unknown figure who would quickly rise to prominence amidst the chaos. His actions and pronouncements would capture the world's attention, drawing international scrutiny to Burkina Faso's ongoing struggles and raising questions about the future of the nation. The January 2022 coup was fueled by anger at President Kabore's inability to stop jihadist violence. The army, under-equipped and demoralized, suffered devastating losses, most notably in the Inata attack, where 53 security officers died after being left without rations. Outrage over government neglect led to protests and calls for change. Lieutenant Colonel Damiba and the Patriotic Movement for Safeguarding and Restoration seized power, promising to restore security and reform the army. The public, weary of bloodshed, initially celebrated the coup, but Damiba's junta quickly suspended the constitution and dissolved the government, pledging only a temporary rule. As months passed, the security crisis deepened and Damiba's promises rang hollow. The same problems persisted, and hope gave way to frustration. The nation's faith in military solutions was once again shaken. By September 2022, Damiba's government had lost public trust as jihadist attacks intensified and nearly 2 million people were displaced. Militants controlled about 40% of the country, and the army suffered heavy losses. Protests erupted in Ouagadougou, with citizens demanding real change. Within the military, younger officers grew restless, feeling abandoned by their leaders. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, head of the Cobra Special Forces in Kaya, became a focal point for this frustration. A deadly attack on a supply convoy in Soum province was the final straw, exposing the military's inability to protect even its own. Traoré and his supporters saw Damiba's leadership as a failure. On September 30th, gunfire in the capital signaled another coup was underway. The cycle of hope and disappointment continued. The nation braced for yet another dramatic shift. On September 30th, 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traoré appeared on national TV, announcing Damiba's removal. At just 34, Traoré was a junior officer with real battlefield experience, not a political insider. He'd served in UN peacekeeping missions and led the Cobra Special Forces in the embattled north. Traoré claimed the coup was driven by frontline soldiers' frustration with failed leadership. He promised to refocus efforts on security and insisted he had no ambition for long-term power. His image as a reluctant, duty-bound leader resonated with a public desperate for a hero. Traoré's rise captured the imagination of many Burkinabe. The country looked to him for a new beginning. Traoré's sudden and unexpected rise to power in Burkina Faso immediately sparked comparisons. The speed and manner in which he assumed leadership reminded many of a pivotal moment in the nation's past, a moment that continues to resonate deeply within the Burkinabe psyche. These comparisons were, of course, to Thomas Sankara, the legendary young captain. Sankara's name is synonymous with revolution and transformation in Burkina Faso. He led a revolution in 1983 that dramatically altered the course of the country's history, ushering in an era of radical change and ambitious reforms. Both men seized power during times of profound crisis, stepping into leadership roles when the nation faced immense challenges and uncertainty. Their ascensions were born from a perceived need for decisive action and a departure from the status quo. Both promised to sweep away the deep-seated corruption that had plagued the nation for far too long and to restore a sense of national pride and dignity to the Burkinabe people. They offered a vision of a brighter future, free from the shackles of the past. Sankara, a fervent Pan-Africanist, championed the cause of African unity and self-reliance, advocating for a continent free from external interference and exploitation. He boldly renamed the country Burkina Faso, meaning Land of Upright Men, a symbolic gesture that reflected his commitment to a new era of integrity and national pride. Sankara launched bold and ambitious reforms in healthcare, striving to make medical services accessible to all citizens regardless of their socio-economic status. He also prioritized education, recognizing it as a cornerstone of national development and a key to empowering future generations. Furthermore, Sankara was a staunch advocate for women's rights, seeking to dismantle discriminatory practices and empower women to participate fully in all aspects of society. His legacy is undeniably complex, revered by many as a visionary leader who dared to dream of a better future for Burkina Faso and Africa as a whole. However, he is also remembered for his autocratic style of rule and the tragic circumstances surrounding his assassination, which cast a long shadow over his achievements. Traoré, often seen sporting a red beret, a sartorial choice that further fuels the comparisons, consciously echoes Sankara's image and political rhetoric, seemingly positioning himself as a continuation of Sankara's unfinished revolution. Many of his supporters see him as Sankara's rightful heir, a leader who can finally realize the unfulfilled promises of the past. They passionately chant his name at rallies, expressing their hope that he will bring about the change they so desperately desire. But the comparison to Sankara is a double-edged sword, a blessing and a curse that simultaneously elevates and burdens Traoré. It sets incredibly high expectations, demanding that he not only emulate Sankara's virtues, but also avoid his pitfalls. Traoré now faces the daunting challenge of living up to the towering legacy of a legend, a task that requires both vision and pragmatism. All the while, he must confront even greater security threats and navigate a complex geopolitical landscape. The shadow of Sankara looms large over his every decision, a constant reminder of the hopes and dreams of a nation. The nation now wonders, with bated breath, if history will tragically repeat itself, leading to a similar outcome as Sankara's untimely demise. Or will Traoré manage to break free from the past and finally usher in an era of lasting positive change for Burkina Faso? Only time will tell. Traoré's government faces a relentless insurgency from jihadist groups like Jenim and ISGS, exploiting poverty and weak state authority. The human toll is staggering. Thousands dead, 2 million displaced, and basic services in collapse. Militants target infrastructure and agriculture, deepening food insecurity and economic crisis. The government's response has been to intensify military operations and recruit civilian volunteers, the VDP. While this boosts numbers, it risks fueling further violence and abuses. The core challenge remains: defeating an enemy embedded in communities and thriving on desperation. Reclaiming lost territory is as much about winning hearts and minds as military might. The battle for Burkina Faso's future is being fought on every front. Traoré's rise sparked jubilation in Burkina Faso, especially among youth who saw him as a patriot and a break from failed elites. His Sankarist rhetoric and promises of sovereignty fueled national pride. Rallies in his support often feature Burkinabe and Russian flags, signaling a desire for new alliances. Internationally, reactions were far less enthusiastic. ECOWAS, the African Union, and Western nations condemned the coup, suspending Burkina Faso and imposing sanctions. France, the former colonial power, faced surging anti-French sentiment and was ordered to withdraw its troops. Traoré's pivot toward Russia and regional allies like Mali and Niger marked a dramatic shift. The country gained popular legitimacy at home but risked isolation abroad. Burkina Faso's new direction left the world watching and wary. Central to Traoré's agenda, a driving force behind his every decision, is a bold and unwavering call for national sovereignty. It's a declaration of independence, a refusal to be dictated by external forces, and self-reliance, a commitment to building a nation that can stand on its own 2 feet. This vision extends to all sectors, from agriculture to industry. He argues that decades of dependence on France and the West, a reliance that has shaped the nation's trajectory for far too long, have ultimately failed Burkina Faso, leaving it vulnerable and underdeveloped. The promise of progress has remained unfulfilled. Expelling French forces, a symbolic act of defiance against neo-colonial influence, and courting Russia, seeking new alliances and partnerships on the global stage, signal a new geopolitical strategy. A shift in allegiances designed to reshape Burkina Faso's future. Traoré has also forged closer ties with Mali, recognizing the shared challenges and opportunities within the region, and Niger, strengthening bonds with neighboring nations who share similar aspirations, forming the Alliance of Sahel States for Regional Defense, a united front against common threats, and a commitment to collective security. Domestically, he urges all citizens to join the fight against insurgents, recognizing that security is a shared responsibility, mobilizing volunteers, empowering communities to defend themselves and their livelihoods, and boosting local agriculture, investing in the nation's food security, and reducing reliance on foreign imports. The rhetoric is one of unity, emphasizing the importance of collective action and shared purpose and shared sacrifice, calling on all Burkinabe to contribute to the nation's transformation. Echoing Sankara's ideals, drawing inspiration from a past leader who championed self-reliance and social justice. But the risks are high. The path to sovereignty is not without its challenges: international isolation, potentially alienating allies, and disrupting established relationships, loss of aid, jeopardizing crucial development programs and humanitarian assistance, and the dangers of arming civilians, potentially exacerbating existing conflicts and creating new security risks. Relying on new partners like Russia, while offering potential benefits, brings its own uncertainties, raising questions about long-term stability and geopolitical implications. Traoré's vision is ambitious, a bold attempt to reshape Burkina Faso's destiny. But the path is fraught with peril, demanding careful navigation and unwavering resolve. The nation's future hangs on whether this gamble for sovereignty can succeed, determining whether Burkina Faso can truly chart its own course. As of June 2025, Burkina Faso stands at a crossroads, caught between hope and fear. Supporters see Traoré as a transformative leader, inspired by Sankara, reclaiming security and national pride. Some military gains and regional alliances have sparked renewed unity. But critics warn of isolation, economic hardship, and the dangers of volunteer militias. The suspension of democracy and the concentration of power raise alarms about the rule of law. Everything hinges on Traoré's ability to deliver real security. If he succeeds, he could break the cycle of coups and crisis. If he fails, he risks becoming just another chapter in a troubled history. Burkina Faso holds its breath, hoping for a new dawn, but bracing for more uncertainty.